Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Crossing the Line with Greg Heym. That's me, in case you didn't know. Why would you know that? You should, why should I have to tell you that? I guess it's my job. So we're in Season 2, Episode 10. Today is St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, and I am joined by my staff. On today's episode, we have Lisa Ray Castrigno.
Good morning.
The only one who wore green. You'll get a little bonus for that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Not really, but...
We're all Irish today.
And Morgan Wilkins. How are you ladies doing today?
Good, very good.
I'm very good.
Well, I'm doing great because my beloved St. John's, your dad's alma mater, won the Big East tournament. I was there. It was magical.
Very excited for you.
They really stomped on Creighton in the second half, and I pity the fools that got to play them in the NCAA tournament because they were on a roll.
I was shocked.
Because they destroyed them in the second.
Yeah,
It was the lowest scoring first half they had all season long.
Really?
And they were only down by, I think it was 5 points.
Yeah, something like that. It was
and then
low.
they said enough of that,
and
RJ and the rest of the teams went nuts.
Yeah, clearly.
I mean, they are peaking at the right time, but they've kind of been peaking all season, so that was good. I had that sandwich between gigs Friday and Sunday, and I'm playing a St. Patrick's Day gig tonight. So my green shirt is home, so it doesn't get wrinkled or stained, because this is sort of like a more formal thing.
Got it.
But did you ladies have nice weekends?
I did. My sister actually ran the half marathon.
Exciting.
Did she
It
win?
was really fun.
I went to a comedy show. Her sister ran a
I don't know if
marathon.
you win. She ran it in about under 2 hours. So that's what she wanted to do, and that was good for her.
All right,
Is that a good number? I
Yeah,
don't
no,
know.
it's good. I think it averages about like maybe 8 to 9 minute miles or something like that.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Which is pretty good.
This may be a
That's
shock, but I don't
impressive.
run half marathons, quarter marathons.
She's
No,
a runner,
that's-
though. She's like always, she will just run really far for no reason. So she actually didn't really train a lot for this. She kind of just did it. But she
Wow.
ran the whole thing, and I went all the way up to Central Park yesterday and supported her and saw her finish. So
That's great.
Oh, that is cool.
And I know you went to a
I
comedy
did.
show.
And I butcher his, a good Italian, another Paisan, and I butcher his name, Sebastian
Maniscalco.
Thank you. Hysterical. Hysterical.
He's known to be funny.
The 2 opening acts, hysterical. It was great. Cried.
You don't
I
want them
laughed
to be
so hard I
too funny,
cried.
though. They're opening acts. You don't want them to be funnier than you, because that can happen.
No, but
I've been
they
to shows
were-
like that.
But believe it or not, like they were hysterical, and it's all topical. So for us, it was all topical. So it was great.
Well, we have a great program today. We're going to touch on a lot of very important things.
Oh, yeah.
Some frightening.
So,
When we talk about the news these days, it can be a little frightening. As always, coming to you from beautiful Studio 1873. But before we start, we have a message from our buddies and our sponsor, CrossCountry Mortgage.
Your dream home is closer than you think. I'm Scott Nadler, VP of Mortgage Lending at CrossCountry Mortgage, and I'm here to get you the perfect loan to match your perfect home. From first-time home buyers to seasoned homeowners, I've helped clients make their moves with confidence. Ready for a smooth, stress-free home buying experience? Let's get you moving today. Call me and let's turn those dreams into keys.
Hey, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. As an official moving partner of Brown Harris Stevens, we know that your clients deserve more than just a move. At Roadway Moving and Storage, we turn moving into an experience they will love. From specialized services to a white glove treatment, we've got it all covered. When you choose Roadway, you're choosing a peace of mind for your clients. Plus, our referral program is the most rewarding in the industry. Want to learn more? Shoot me an email at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
All right, so let's start with the latest economic news, Lisa
Well, your
Ray.
PI brothers came.
PI
to
brothers.
town, your favorite.
Copyright Greg Heym Enterprises. One of these days we'll have the shirt. They came out last week, and
that
I
they
mean, the
did.
bottom line is they came in lower than expected. The year-over-year change, the monthly change. PPI was actually flat, which is, sort of the best news you can get.
Right.
And we needed it because stocks really had a rough week. We'll talk a little bit about that later. So we needed some good data on inflation, and this certainly helped. And between that and a shutdown being averted, we had a good day Friday with stocks, although it didn't make up for what happened the other couple days. But maybe some of that momentum will carry forward. Maybe the most important thing is housing costs, as measured by the CPI, are starting to come down. It was still almost half the monthly increase was from housing, or as the BLS calls it, shelter, because it's still the Middle Ages, Ray. Again, when homes had moats, and To keep the dragon at bay. You have to. How else are you going to keep the dragon at bay without a moat? Although if it's a real dragon, it could probably just evaporate all the water and just walk right in. But so they had their lowest year-over-year increase since December of 21. And we've talked about the kind of crazy way they use rent comparables, which I think is the fair way to do it because it's about the cost of the housing, not the value. But they do it in 6-month increments. They go back and check on the same home 6 months later, and that is sort of a delay in the data. However, we would have thought it would have caught up by now, but we'll take the good news that we can get. The biggest declines last month, airline fares and gasoline. So I hope everybody enjoyed their vacations.
Yeah, exactly.
Lena, did you go somewhere?
Didn't go anywhere.
No, you were here doing the podcast with me. We went nowhere. Yeah, I know. That's true. Food costs still high. Egg prices rose 10% just last month. That's bird flu related, but it looks like we're going to get some.
I think there was a shortage as well because I went to Whole Foods and you could only buy 2 and it was completely empty.
Well, because the flu is not helping. And
well, when they keep calling the birds, you're creating. Listen, if it's necessary, it's unfortunate, but it does create that supply and demand issue.
Right. So, we can be happy that the PI brothers came in lower than expected, but their year-over-year increases are still well above 2%. And core numbers are higher. That is our concern, and what's sort of handcuffing the Fed, because I think they cut rates way too soon. Inflation started heading in the wrong direction. Now with all the tariff talk, everybody's wondering if that's going to cause inflation. So, we have all this uncertainty and this craziness, and everybody's afraid, and we're going to calm you down later in the show. We're going to let you sweat it out for a little bit. And then, well, actually, if you have to rely on an economist to calm you down and put you in a good mood, you probably need to see a different type of scientist. All right, so this morning, just before we came in here, retail sales came out. Yeah. Now, retail sales are important because consumer spending is 70% of GDP. We had a bad number in January, decline. That number was actually revised down more, but for February, retail sales up just 0.2%, which is terrible.
Well, I've been trying. I mean, I bought a TV. I've been buying some shoes. I'm doing my best, but I'm one person.
No, you got to pay like full price. You're out there getting the stuff on sale because of your retail background.
Of course.
That doesn't help.
Everything on sale.
So they were looking for.
Well, the sale helped me.
Enough with your shopping habits. So
we could go on all day.
Yes, we could.
Markets were looking for a 0.6% increase. They got 0.2%, and that number may sound familiar because that was the increase in CPI last month. So basically, again, spending more money, less goods, because the retail sales data is not adjusted for inflation. So that's just the price increase alone. And so you basically say it's kind of flat from an inflation-adjusted point. They do adjust it for seasonal factors. Yeah. But the January decline was revised from 0.9% to a negative 1.2%. So the fact that it only rose 0.2% is pretty weak. There's this thing called the control group. We could spend a lot of time talking on this, but that would put everybody to sleep, including me. It excludes things like food services, auto dealers, building material stores, and gasoline stations. So it's kind of looking at the core stuff, but it's that number that really determines the GDP number. It goes a lot into that, and the PCE expenditures, right? We always say that's the final word on sales and inflation. That rose by better than expected 1%. So maybe that's good. Anytime you look at a headline number, that may not be the most important number in there. It may be the core number, or it may not be the core number. Or as inflation, remember they used to talk about super core, and then that went away like Paulie in The Godfather. You just didn't see him no more. They don't even mention him. I used to say every other word was supercore, and then you find out supercore is not coming down, and it's near 4%, so they don't mention that anymore. So the question still, and we talked about this a little last week, is people start thinking about recession. Consumer spending was negative and basically flat if you adjust for inflation. That's 2/3 of the quarter. The Atlanta Fed's GDP now, which will be revised after we film this, so I'm not going to guess what it was, but as of this morning, it was running about negative 2.4%. Some of that, again, because of the huge surge in imports pre-tariff, right? Because you're going to get in you want your stuff here before it gets slapped with any tariffs.
Well, a lot of people jumped into purchasing, but which is interesting why then the retail sales went down if people were jumping on the opportunity to get goods before the tariffs kicked in.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, you don't have to. Well, I guess it's a timing thing, right? Because you may not want to flood the market with all that product right away. Because
Right, so maybe
it's gonna lower
businesses
the
are sitting
price.
on some of their inventory.
They probably are. But that inventory, again, net exports is the final piece in the GDP puzzle,
Right.
and that's going to be a huge negative. And with consumer spending so far running negative for the month, if you kind of average those two, for the quarter, that's not a good sign. But we'll see. Again, all the talk about tariffs is driving everybody nuts. The
Yeah.
stock market is taking a beating. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But when we calm down, breathe a little bit, listen to the economist and his very nice, calming, deep voice.
Yes.
That soothing voice that you listen to at night before you go to bed.
Just remember, I hate listening to my own voice. It's the worst thing ever. When you watch this video back, just see if you like your own voice.
No,
Nobody
I know.
does.
Yeah.
But we just remember that, unemployment rate is 4.1%. Jobs are still plentiful. Job openings are still.
Yeah,
are
the JOLTS was still pretty decent.
JOLTS
Yeah.
was still pretty. It lags a bit, but initial claims for unemployment still very low. So let's take a little, solstice in that. Although
Find
some
solace in that.
people will think that it is, a lot of the times the data peaks right before the recession, but I think it's a long stretch, between where we are right now and where people think we may be. Because there's soft data and there's hard data. Soft data are things like sentiment, like how's Morgan feeling about things.
Yeah.
Because if Morgan's not feeling it, then she's not buying. Lisa's always
This
buying.
is true.
And I'm always looking for a new guitar, but
Yeah, there you
not
go.
everybody's got
Yeah.
that. But when the hard data comes in, and we're going to get some, there's always data coming in. It just never ends. It never ends.
No.
Every week, it's more and more.
That's how we keep jobs, though.
much
This is
data.
this is the good thing.
Yeah, keep
Well-
the data coming, please.
Yes, it gives us material, so I don't have to think
Yeah.
much before I go in here. So, again, I think we'll need to see some more data. And remember, the GDP data can be misleading based on what is causing declines. Things like net exports or buildups in inventory, then disappearing. So we always have to look at the breakdown. The first thing we should always look at when we look at GDP is consumption, because that's what drives the economy, is what we all spend. And apparently it's not enough. So we got to step up.
I'm
Keep
trying.
spending.
I'm trying.
All right, so that's the latest economic news. We have a really interesting topic for our next segment, but let's take a break, and then we're going to come back with a really interesting discussion.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
All right, so we're back. So there's always been an argument about pay equity. Fair methodologies are always questioned.
Yeah.
But so we have two generations here of women.
Thank you.
I won't say what generations they are because
Never be able to tell.
I
Never be
would
able
get
to tell.
in trouble.
We could be sisters.
Thank
So-
you. Yes, we could.
Okay. So, Morgan, why don't you give us sort of the overview of the report and its findings, and then let's talk about how that makes each of you feel and what we think might be some of the solutions to this, because
Yeah.
this is something where there are signs that things are improving.
Yeah.
And this is a global report, so
Yeah.
this is
Keep
not
that
just
in
for the
mind.
U.S. But why don't you give us like a nice, concise
a little,
summary of it?
synopsis.
That's it. The
Concise.
Cliff
I'll be
Notes.
concise
I
if
think
I can.
overview.
your generation
The
doesn't
Cliff
remember
Notes,
Cliff
if you
Notes,
will.
but we
I
lived
do,
with it.
or footnotes, right?
No, Cliff
No.
Notes are Wikipedia. That's
No,
what
but you
Cliff
remember
Notes
the
were.
yellow books?
Yes. I did every book report in school by using Cliff Notes.
You
Oh my
cheater. I
gosh.
read the books.
That's your problem. Okay,
Well,
go ahead, Morgan.
Yeah, so JP Morgan came out with an article basically
Now, no relation, right?
explaining
No, I'm just
no relation. Yeah, make that clear. Basically explaining that it will take us about 134 years to reach full parity, or in other words, close the gender pay gap in just across the world globally. And
Now to put that, this is the first thing that I thought of. So 134 years ago, women couldn't vote. So just think about how long a time that is, right?
Well, and that's what I mean. That's why I kind of start with, like, you know, how I kind of see this after I read the article. I think we have to almost, while the number in itself is extremely shocking and definitely concerning if you're looking at it at face value, I feel like we can't read too much into it because there's no way for us to truly know what's going to happen in 100 years, let alone the next, 25. So I think that, the number at face value can definitely be like, well, then there's just no hope for us, right? If that's what we're looking at, the next 150 years, everyone's kids, grandchildren, et cetera, still won't see having equal pay in their male counterparts in whatever field they choose, then it can be a very daunting statistic. But I feel like as people who always look at the data and take the data really seriously, also want to preface to not be scared at the 134. Like, there's still hope for us.
Well, so this has always driven me nuts because I don't know why companies, I can't imagine they sit around and plan and have two different pay schedules for men and women. So was there anything in there that struck a chord with you? I know the participation rates are up for women, which in a bunch of industries, so that's good, and maybe some more industries more favorable to women raising small children, giving them an opportunity to maybe work from home or stuff like that. So that's good.
No, definitely. They said post-pandemic, about 65.7% of the female labor force went up, which is a huge percentage and a huge increase for us to really see that. So that was a good sign. But it also just sparked something in me to make me think of kind of, what prompted that at that time. And of course, some of it is people had to leave work for COVID and then they returned. But I feel like because that number is so large, it really had a lot to do with social media influencing. They said prime-aged females, which I'm not going to go into what a prime-aged female is. I'm not going to open up that can of worms. I think we're all prime-aged females. I don't know what determines when a woman is in her prime, but I'm just quoting right now.
Don't look at me. I got nothing to say about it.
Wait, we're going to both look at him.
Yeah,
no.
We're going to demand you answer.
No, but I just think that a big increase as we're seeing probably is a lot, to attribute to social media influencing, because that is a hugely female-dominated industry, and it exploded after COVID because everyone was in their house making content for fun, and then they were able to turn it into a business. So certain things like that, I definitely think.
So what is the gap? How many cents to the dollar is it currently? Do we have a number on that? Is because I thought it was.
It's 83.
Yeah,
83 cents,
yes.
right? So again, this really boggles my mind. I don't know why. Who benefits from paying somebody less to do the same work? I don't know why that's. And I can joke that I get around this by only having women on staff, which could also get me in trouble. So
Yes.
You're an ally for sure.
I think there'll be a new host next week, but we'll see about that. And I'm sure Ray. And I'm sure it'll be a woman because it's not going to be me. But all right,
You're replaceable.
Now your generation, how did they take something like this? Because a lot of them are their first job or their second job, just getting in the workforce, and then they're hit with this. Do you think it? Well, I hope it will encourage them to fight back against this. But
I was going to say, I hope it's not discouraging being someone on the other end of the spectrum. I hope it doesn't discourage women to come into the workforce thinking that I'm never going to get ahead, I'm never going to get there, I may as well not try. And I wouldn't want to see that.
Right.
For sure, would not want to see that.
Yeah.
So stick it out, jump in, start there. It's a place to start.
Definitely. I feel like that's even a good spot to bring up the other article we were talking about the generational wealth transfer.
Right.
Which is really interesting. They're basically saying that women are, going to inherit, around $124 trillion.
Well, 70% of it.
70% of the 100.
70%
There's going to be about around $124 trillion dollars in
They
wealth
set
transfer.
to take the majority of it.
Right.
Right. Well, it said about somebody estimated 70%. They probably just made that up, but it's the baby boomers giving the money to the children, Or spouses.
Or, I was gonna say, or
benefit
wives who
disproportionately.
have, then survived their husbands and then inherit that.
Which they tend to do, apparently.
Yes.
Which,
women live longer.
The articles CNBC said that, they're going to be, therefore, because of this, they're going to be some key economic players in the future.
Well, they got that kind of cash, sure.
Well, it changes the
So-
landscape because in talking about the 134 to close the gap, but now this is talking about by 2048,
Yep.
which is only 24 years away, is a real chance to significantly close that gap. It might not take that 134 years that they're expecting or anticipating or estimating, because what will women do with the money they're going to inherit?
Now, you've been in the
Exactly.
workforce a little bit longer than
A little bit, just a little bit.
Just a tad.
How do you view this, and do you feel like it's changed? Has it gotten better as you?
It's hard for me to say. I mean, I came from two different industries, right? So retail just predominantly was led by mostly women, but it was also an industry that didn't pay as well. So it wasn't, I never woke up and went to work and went, I think that, the guy who's the manager is making more than me. I didn't focus on that. I focused on me, my trajectory, my career, my own career path, my own promotions. Plus, women do step out of the workforce. And I think if we don't at least acknowledge that that is where some of this does come from, you do miss those years. And if you are completely out of the workforce, you're coming back in, you are starting over. So you should be paid competitively 100%. And if you're coming in entry level, you should be, on par with any male that's coming in at that same time entry level. But women do fall behind just simply by life choices. You choose to step away to raise your family, you could potentially lose 20 years. That's a generation. Like if I happened to be a stay-at-home mom, I'd be coming back into the workforce almost the same time as Morgan is coming into the workforce. I shouldn't expect that I'm going to make what I was when I stepped out.
Well, that raises a good point. One of the things that I think will help all of this, and it's something that you hear people talk about, is not just transparency, men versus women, but people don't want to talk about how much money they make. And I think
We were
Yeah.
discussing that earlier.
Exactly.
that sort of openness
Yeah.
could help, because then this would get noticed more and could be addressed more. And if you try to make any adjustments to the data, which you always do when you do something like this, it's hard to gauge what those are, whether it's you leave the workforce or whatever reason it may be.
Some of it, too, is the jobs that women choose for various reasons. You choose certain careers, sometimes for what interests you, but also for what gives you flexibility. Women became teachers because they could be at work and then still also be home when their kids were home.
Right.
Real estate.
Real estate.
isn't-
So some fields that you do have high earners in some of those fields, but traditionally you might not, which also leads to just unforeseeable pay. There's nothing you can do to fill that particular gap if you're choosing industries that are going to pay less.
Right.
Personally, you were saying before about what we could do to change it so we can start encouraging all students into different fields. Not just what you thought traditionally should fit any particular gender. What interests you? STEM has become big for girls.
Right.
Pushing
Yes.
girls into, I don't know any girl in my generation when I graduated high school who went into engineering. I knew quite a few boys who did, but no girls.
Yeah.
But I think one of the other problems is if you look at the C-suites of companies, women are dramatically underrepresented there.
Yeah,
And we're in an
very
industry
much so.
where a lot of firms are run by women, like ours. Hey,
Yeah.
Bess. Do you think women need to push for more representation? I know that it's a thing, but I
Yeah.
think it's something that really needs to be talked about more because
Yeah.
you wouldn't, and it's funny because the authors of this report made it a point that they're paying 99%.
Yeah, I was going to say we have to point that out that they
Yes.
put
They're better than
themselves
everybody else. They
as
kind of
being-
mentioned that
as
in
doing
the
this
summary,
perfectly.
which is okay. If
Yeah.
it's true, good for you. That's
Then they should
Yeah,
be commended if
exactly.
they're
If they're
paying
doing it.
equal for the work.
Then let us know your ways and how you got there. So
Yeah, I
we can
think-
get there too.
I think transparency is a way to clean up any problem,
Absolutely.
although it can lead to bitterness, but it's the only way that if we have an open, like governments have pay scales.
Yep.
They don't have different ones for men and women. You're a
No.
certain level, you get step increases,
Yeah.
and that's it. The private sector doesn't work
No,
that
but they
way.
do force, right? What's the law that now says that the salary has to be part of the job description? I don't know. Is that just New York City?
New York City, if you're
Yeah, I think that's
advertising
just
it,
New
but that's a
York City.
range. And if you ever looked,
Yeah, they
you
can
know,
be
on
rather.
LinkedIn, or sometimes that range is 50,000 to 250,000. Like,
yeah, they
put
just
a
have to put something.
put a big range, and it's always hard, you know, for especially at a younger age, not just for women, for men too, to know how to negotiate.
Yeah,
and
it is.
I think that's something that isn't taught in business school even.
Yeah.
No,
And
and no
I-
one ever sat down with me and said, okay, when you're ready, you know, I just always felt like, okay, well, I think if I deserved more, I used to just go right into my boss's office and say, you know, here's why, and laid out what I did, what my job and my role and my function was, and what I've learned and what I've been able to bring that enhances the value.
Yeah.
And listen, you don't ask, you don't get. The worst
Well,
they can say is
confidence.
no, but
Yeah.
you get the answer is always no if you don't ask the question.
Yeah, confidence really goes hand in hand with experience. Like just and that's, you know, obviously in the basis of the workplace as well. Like the more experience you have, the more confidence you're going to have to go in there and negotiate for numbers that you feel like are equal to your value. But that goes along with anything, right? The more you do something, the more confident you become at it, and then, you know, the better qualified.
It's like
you are to
hosting a
give advice
podcast.
about it.
No, so then I guess
You know,
the,
honestly.
yeah.
All right, it's going to be crossing the line with Morgan Wilkins next week. I understand. No, but all right. So you were an athlete in college,
I was.
and this has been a pay disparity has been a big thing in professional sports. Tennis,
Yes, it has.
your
Yeah,
sport.
NCAA is now paying their athletes.
Yeah, and thank God, because that's how St. John's got all those players.
I knew that was coming. I knew St.
NIL
John's
are
was
my
going to work.
favorite
with
three
me.
that
letters
right up
right
for
now.
him.
You don't have to recruit anymore. No, but for years, women's tennis players complained, and now the U.S. Open. I don't know if it's every
Well,
soccer
soccer
Grand
also.
Slam, but I
Yeah.
know the U.S. Open, it's the same pay
Yes, now it's equal
for
pay.
men and women.
Yeah.
Obviously, WNBA athletes don't make what the NBA makes. You know, they talk about that.
Yeah.
You know, I think some of it also has to be looked at by a revenue side of thing. Like hockey players make a fraction of what the other three major sports make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that has nothing to do with gender, but it's about how much revenue the NHL generates compared to, especially the NFL. The NFL just prints money. So does the NBA. I mean, they literally print it.
I think tennis is an interesting example because if you're looking at like, you know, soccer, whether it's, you know, men's versus women's, or if you're looking at basketball, men and women's, the game doesn't change in itself, right? You're on the field for the same amount of time. The quarters are the same, like that is all the same. For Grand Slams, for those who don't know, tennis for women, it's 2 out of 3 sets for, you know, no matter what tennis tournament you're playing ever. For men, the Grand Slams have 3 out of 5 sets. So they are technically playing more tennis to win these numbers and, you know, win these, you know, big prize money. So I think it should be equal. I'm happy that it is. I think that, you know, women have been putting in the work for a while to get there, and I'm happy, you know, we finally made it. But I think that's an argument that comes across with tennis a lot.
Well, I think, though, at the end of the day, if you look at, there's been times where women's tennis has been far more interesting than men's tennis.
Absolutely.
You know,
it sways back and forth for
Yeah,
sure.
and people want to see, you know, a good match. They want to see an exciting match.
Yeah.
And so 3 out of 5 sets, sometimes those things go 5 hours, and it's like, it's crazy. I was at one of
the
those at
best
the U.S.
ever.
Open. I think it ended at 2:30 in the morning.
Same.
When Jimmy Connors
been there
beat
too.
Patrick McEnroe, it was an exciting thing. Boy, did McEnroe choke that night.
He's probably still mad about it, knowing
Well,
that.
Patrick, I mean, he
Well, how much
wasn't
did he
his
choke
brother.
if it went to 2:30 in the morning? I mean,
Well,
he actually
blew
played for quite a
It's a
while.
love lead, and I think he was up 2 breaks in the
okay,
third
gotcha.
set.
That's
But
pretty-
Connors was
that's tough.
known to come back.
Spoiler, yeah.
Yeah. So, do we have any closing thoughts on this?
You know, I just think we have to ask ourselves. I think that the conversation around generational wealth and that sort of inheritance and seeing that by 2048, but then not seeing equal pay until 134 years, like there's such big numbers. It's like we have to ask ourselves, like, why are we, you know, so ready to put women in a position of inheriting these large sums of money, but we won't put them in a position to earn it once they've clearly shown that they're qualified enough and they've worked for it, and they're capable to be receiving those same amounts of money. So I feel like, you know, it's a question that I think is going to be going on continuously. It's just a conversation that we'll always have. Hopefully the scale won't be as big, and I think it has gotten smaller over the years. Of course, we're kind of closing in on that big discrepancy, but yeah, I just think we have to keep like holding ourselves accountable and having the conversation.
Any closing thoughts?
I would say to continue to encourage with the hybrid, some remote, because it gives women an opportunity to be able to be home with their kids and not have to make that choice necessarily, that I'm either full-time mom or full-time worker. I can find some balance in that. Education has become huge. My generation, not all the girls I graduated with went to college. And now I would say probably in your generation, more of them did, and probably almost all.
Yeah.
That's huge right there, because it gives you a skill set for choices of careers to go into and more options, and continue to encourage people to pick lots of things. Think outside the box.
One of the things we forgot to mention that we talked about a little bit is that single women are buying houses at a much higher frequency than single men.
Bring it back to home ownership and real estate.
Well, look, I think that's empowerment for people.
Absolutely.
And I think men are just lazy, and we don't want to, we're fine living with mommy, especially when she cooks as well as my mother did. I don't know. That could be a whole show of itself.
Oh, absolutely.
But, I think there's been a lot of focus, too, on financial education for women.
Yeah.
Some of the most prominent people that talk about it, like Susie Orman, are women.
Right. Yes, which is huge for females who were always a little, I think, intimidated, because when women traditionally, back in the day, men were the ones who handled the household budget, right? So women never necessarily
Not in my house.
No.
But in the old days, the women, they always used to say,
They didn't
let the man
understand this
think he's
stuff.
in charge, but we're holding the money. They don't even know where the checkbook is.
No, the women didn't know, how to invest or feel confident to go and invest. Buying a home, so you're creating wealth for yourself. Women have become much smarter in the financial arena, and that's a huge also way to cut that gap when you learn how to do.
And let's cut this gap already. We can't wait 100+ years for this. This is ridiculous. It's
because I'll be just at retirement at that point. It's going to be disappointing for me.
To pay anybody less who's doing the work, I would like to go ask all these CEOs, do you think this is actually being done? And we were talking before the show, I made the reference, it's like a co-op board. They don't want to say the exact reason because there are laws against discrimination.
Yes.
So that's where a lot of this gray comes in. All right, we have one more segment, but before we do that, we're going to take one last break, a short one.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
All right, we're back for this last segment. I did a panel discussion at REBNY last week with some other market experts, and we were asked at the end to give some, a little bit of advice about, there's a lot of craziness going on and a lot of stuff happening that is scaring people, and we see consumer sentiment down. People are worried. So I came up with a slogan, also copyright Greg Heym Enterprises, embrace the chaos.
We're in so much trouble.
We are living in a chaotic world. If you don't think so, here are some headlines from last week that just going to be like, you may need, a safe space if you hear something. Dow had its worst week since 2023. Stock market in the last 3 weeks alone has lost $5 trillion in value. Trillion. Gold prices have passed $3,000 an ounce. That's a record high. Gold's going up. That means people are panicked. Consumer sentiment fell more than expected in March. And even the president has warned that a transition period for the economy is likely, and we can't rule out a recession. So enough of that's, any of those statements by themselves would have been enough to make you not so happy and maybe keep Lisa out of the mall. I don't know.
All of them together?
Oh, nothing keeps me out of the mall.
And then the Treasury Secretary said that the administration is focused on the, quote, real economy and not concerned about a little market volatility. Now, what that means is you can't judge the health of the economy solely by the stock market, because the stock market goes up and down for reasons that have nothing to do with the economy. It could be about one company. We've certainly seen that with the Magnificent Seven, which have been dominating. I mean, how many times you hear NVIDIA is said in one day?
Yeah.
So, they corrections, according to our Secretary of Treasury, are healthy. I mean, they have to happen, or, things can't go up forever. They become unaffordable. Just like recessions, the sort of upside for housing is it's a way to reset housing prices. Mm-hmm. If you go too long without a recession, like we certainly did in between the financial crisis and COVID, housing gets unaffordable and the market slows greatly. So we don't root for these things to happen. It's also how to get inflation down, is to have the economy slow. But what the administration is trying to tell people is that we're looking for longer term things that we think will make the economy strong in the long term. We can't worry about what happens to stock prices now. You can believe that or not, but they're looking also at, keeping more investment here and keeping jobs here. We talked about it last week. Tariffs have three purposes. One is to raise revenue. We certainly need it, especially when I tell you how bad our deficit is, not even halfway into the fiscal year. So that's number one. Number two is to protect jobs. If everything's going to be made overseas, another thing the Treasury Secretary said last week was, this country's not about getting cheap goods. That's not our sole existence. That's not the purpose to import things, because then people will say, well, we don't have enough manufacturing jobs here. We don't have enough blue-collar jobs. Well, tariffs, the third thing is it's a negotiating technique. You want to make these cars somewhere else? Okay, well, you're going to pay 25% tariff when you bring them in here. And that will encourage companies. And Honda, is the most recent one to announce that they're going to make their new Civics in Indiana instead of out of the country. So, and I think most of these tariffs, if not all of them, are negotiating ploys. Because tariffs lead to reciprocal tariffs. And, it's like you sue me, I'm going to sue you. You tariff me, I'm going to tariff you. But one thing to remember, no matter how you look at it, stocks were overvalued. We've had 2 years of 20% plus gains in stocks as measured by the S&P 500. A lot of that has been from those 7 stocks. And my favorite economist, no, it's not me. I'm not that. I have an ego, but it's not that big. My favorite economist, Brian Westbury, had this video he released on Friday called "The Era of Easy Everything is Over." So what's been easy? Money. When you think about it, you had all this COVID stimulus, trillions of dollars. We had that excess savings. That's all gone. We had a 40% increase in the money supply, which is what caused all this inflation. Now the money supply is contracting a little bit. It's not contracting 40%, but it's contracting. The days of 0% interest rates and 3% mortgages, gone. Can't find them anymore. They're out with Paulie. You're not going to see them anymore. So without that support, is it a shock that companies aren't looking as good as they were, or they're trading too high based on their earnings? This is not 1999 again, when we didn't even know what these companies did. But I think any way you look at it, however you want to discount the earnings, they're overvalued, and a correction was needed. And now we've had a correction. Where it goes from here, who knows? But getting back to the budget deficit, so it's already over $1 trillion for this fiscal year, which ends in September.
Crazy.
So you're not even 6 months of the year, and you have like a record deficit already. That's scary. And some of you may say, well, that's because tax cuts are hurting receipts. No. Receipts have never been higher. The receipts have set a record in February. We never had more tax receipts than we did in February. The problem is we also never spent more money than we did in February. So you could have all the receipts in the world. We always say it's a spending problem, not a revenue problem. That's what we mean. And a lot of economists, like myself, would say, we want the money in private sector hands rather than the government. Private sector usually does a better job of things. We have a Fed meeting this week. They're not going to touch rates, but expect Jerome Powell to say, no, we think rates are appropriate, but we're ready to step in, if things get worse. And remember, the 1% cuts that we had last year are going to start to filter in the economy. It takes, up to a year for those cuts to matter. The problem is that may stoke inflation a little more. I know everybody keeps saying tariffs are going to raise inflation. That's not true. It'll raise the price of what you're tariffing. But at the end of the day, I only have so much money to spend. If I'm spending more on Ron Guidry bobbleheads, I can't buy Alfred E. Newman statues. Well, I didn't buy this. Ray gave it to me.
That'd be a very sad, Greg.
No, but this is the thing. I only have so much money to spend. So does everybody.
Yeah.
So it's So what does this have to do with real estate? Well, when you have this chaos and people are worried, particularly sellers who have been on and the spring season is approaching, the weather's actually, although it rained really hard overnight, but it's not 20 degrees every morning like it used to be.
Sure.
This is your chance, home buyers. Take advantage of the uncertainty. Take advantage of a seller that may be a little nervous. That this is when you can negotiate. When things are cool and everybody's relaxed and we're certain, nobody negotiates, and you're going to spend more. But, I mean, if you wait for certainty, it's never going to come. Never. 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 But your best chance to negotiate is now. Because, in case you haven't noticed, well, you should because we say it every week, mortgage rates have fallen 7 of the past 8 weeks. And even last week, it's ticked up a little bit. So while everybody was so worried about tariffs, the 10-year Treasury has been falling and taking mortgage rates with them. So how do you feel? Can you embrace the chaos, Morgan? You think that's a good slogan?
I can certainly try.
Okay. Well, in this world of tweets and social media, chaos just gets magnified a lot. So do you use it to take advantage of the sales that are there? We all use it, right?
Yeah, because if things are, stuff that I'm looking at, I just bought something but the price dropped another $80. So I went, okay, now's the time to buy it.
Yeah.
See, way to keep the economy going. That's good.
Listen, I'm trying to do my part. I'm out there supporting the GDP and buying things.
That's good. We need the support because I haven't bought a guitar in a while. So
gosh,
I know it's been a
I
couple
think you're
months.
due for a new one.
I have my eye on
Should
one.
have gotten a
but
green one for your gig
I do
tonight.
have a green one.
He does.
I
Are
already
you
do.
going to use it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
I
good.
had a green shirt, green guitar.
He's all set for St. Patrick's Day.
All set.
It's funny. We did a St. Patrick's Day parade gig thing 2 weeks ago, and this guy's like, "Wow, you're an amazing guitarist," and he looks, he goes, "You have a green guitar," and it's a Yamaha, so it's got like the racing stripes on it. It looks really cool.
I'm trying to think if I've ever seen
You've seen
at any of your gigs. I think
It's
I
a little
may
on the
have.
heavy side, so I don't use it. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
We
So,
digress.
We
Embrace
digress.
the chaos. Chaos breeds opportunity. When things are calm and they're going in the right direction, everybody's happy, you don't get to negotiate. Now you have that opportunity. I suggest you get in touch with your professionals and get out there because now is the time, I think, to act. Just like as Warren Buffett always says, stock market, when it has a sale, nobody buys. It seems that when homes are on sale and the chaos is driving everybody nuts and people are stepping out of the market, that's the time you want to be in. So that's your tip of the day. Sorry we ran it a little bit long, but we had a lot of problems in the world to solve.
Yes.
You're welcome.
It was a busy day.
So that's it. I want to thank Morgan and Lisa Ray and Lisa Ray and Lena for helping us with the show. And thanks to everybody for supporting it. And we look forward to crossing the line with you again next week.